Good afternoon. All right. My name is Pat Sullivan. I'm the Associate Director of Operational Technology for American Water. Tell you a little bit about American Water here. We've been servicing customers. Sorry, I'm a walker. Sorry. We've been servicing our customers and communities for over 135 years now. We are about 6,500 employees strong, servicing those communities nationwide. We are the largest, excuse me, tickle in my throat. We are the largest publicly traded water, wastewater provider in North America, or in the United States anyway. So that 1 billion gallons of water treated and distributed every day, 6,500 strong, 25 plus years of award-winning service and recognition in the industry. Very, very proud of those accomplishments. Look at our geography here. We are coast to coast here in the U.S., very, very expansive, from the west coast to the east coast. The states identified in blue there are regulated water industry operations across 14 states. The states in gray with indicators in there represent our reg-like industries, which are associated with our military services group. We're very proud of the fact that we are able to partner with and serve the communities of 18 military bases around the country across 15 states. So again, very, very expansive across the U.S. here. A few other statistical numbers to elaborate size, scale. See, the amount of pipeline there is very large, very expansive. The number of treatment plants and wells is going to be relevant and evident as we talk a little bit about some of the challenges of standardization and disparity later in the presentation here. So resilience, as a critical infrastructure organization, resilience is first and foremost, just predominant in our thought process and our assessment. Risk assessment, mitigation strategies are always with the intent of making sure our operations are resilient and our ability to provide our services. So our IoT, IT/OT belief is that enabling excuse me, sorry, thank you, Derek, is that the business needs are driven and by technology enablement. And then the use of that technology is what then enables business performance improvements and success for our operations. So circling back to Craig's presentation here, talking about some of those risks and challenges, cybersecurity and the extremes in weather are going to be a focus of this OT initiative I'm going to talk about here today. So I think we all understand and have a vision and appreciation for, threat assessment and mitigation. If you take the physical presence of a flood, a weather event, a tornado, a hurricane, right? So what do we have to do? We saw that and said we need to protect an asset. So the assessment and the mitigation was we need to build a wall, right? Build a wall. So we did that, and a few years later, that another level storm comes through, and you can see that it looks like it mitigated its effect, and all's good. But we're not done there, right? Mitigation and assessment is a continual process. If you look at that event, you'll see that we came that close to actually breaching the wall, within an inch of breaching the storm wall for that solution. So again. Reassessment, remitigation, build a larger wall, have a more conducive, protective environment so that 4 or 5 years later, that next big storm that came through was blocked, right? So just an example, an analogous, kind of rundown of that process of identification and mitigation. So like I said, we grow through acquisition, right? So what that means is we take on a lot of legacy systems and disparate operating control systems. So that presents issues for non-standardization and coordination of control. So I think, pre-pandemic, we had a belief, some thought process of, operations availability is not a big issue. We have a large support staff and we can respond to disturbances when necessary. Remote access to our facilities, we have the right technology to do it. We have capabilities, so we'll be sufficient. The fact that we have all those disparate systems is not such a crisis because we have subject matter expertise, for all of those systems, so we'll be good. But what did we discover? When the reality of that scenario came up, we found out that the system availability or operation staff availability was going to be limited in larger numbers than expected. That connectivity we thought was going to be good enough that had gaps, had vulnerabilities, right? Had client server architecture issues. And then that familiarity with those disparate systems showed up a lot more without access to the appropriate SMEs. So we needed to mitigate that. So we decided we needed an infrastructure and a platform that was going to allow us better remote access, better control, as well as give us enterprise-level access to our data for our business needs to remove the dependency on local operations for that. That required us to come up with a secured separation design. We needed to have remote operations center capable platform, take advantage of new technologies like virtualization and fault tolerance, all the while planning for and building a new SCADA platform to standardize and bring that commonality to the experience. And with the intent of self-service of data for our business needs, right? So now we can have water quality, engineering, asset management, all have access to data without dependency on local operations. So we had previously made the decision to go with the inductive automation ignition platform, for a lot of those reasons when we were deciding on our enterprise platform. And one thing that brought to the table as well is the ecosystem that supports that. The amount of systems integrators and people capable of supporting across the country is expansive. It gave us the opportunity to work with premier partners like Flexware and ACC to come on board and be part of our standardization design, take advantage of their industry experience as well. You can see there with the pictures of mobile-ready environment. High-performance HMI was going to be a big part of our design strategy. Take advantage of this new age exposure to our operators. Real quick here, the difference between these two levels then, for our enterprise then, a highly secured architecture to allow for the access of our business needs, our business groups to be able to come to this platform and get data securely up through the data pipeline from operations, expose it in a view-only environment, and then down at the lower level, still use the same common platform for our local control operations in a secured environment as well, but allows for the scalability that we need for the expanse of our operations. So that portal, the enterprise portal, again, from a view-only perspective, intent and plan was to bring everything to a common data model now, get away from all those disparate systems at the bottom, and then normalize the data so that it's easily accessible and usable by all of our business organizational needs. And then at the same time, plan for the eventual upgrade of those legacy systems to get them onto this new platform, right? And again, building this as a framework so that we can have the commonality of how we do operational control from one facility to the next, where those disparate systems were providing, challenges there. Quick, identifications for a high-performance HMI. You can have it customized to the local desires and needs. Mobility is a huge part of that for our standardization. If you look at that screen there, we've got iPad, desktop, iPhone. It's the same data. It's the same format. Configuration management doesn't require multiple systems. We work within one application and it's mobilely responsive. So circling back to some of the risks that had been identified, in Craig's presentation there as well, from a cybersecurity perspective, an OT environment, our culture and a lot of cultures are based on this set it and forget it mentality around OT systems, right? Once you put them in, you're not going back and patching and upgrading and doing all these various things because they're perceived to be isolated. But the reality is there's vulnerabilities and we need a little more rigor. Right, and that's where IT and OT kind of, they compete and they disagree on that, right? So, that's a challenge in itself within an organization if you don't have that IT/OT coordination and/or convergence. So, got to break down those walls. So, from a mitigation perspective, that was a big strategy for us and a process of IT/OT convergence. Bring those organizations together. Now they operate together. They have the same goals and the same agenda. They collaborate to use the best-in-class, best-in-breed applications and tool sets to bring the rigor that is traditionally associated with IT systems down to the OT systems where we need it a little more. Standardization of hardware platforms, for technology-enabled, things like, our Rockwell PLCs and our switches, having the cybersecurity kind of connectivity, and tool sets that are necessary. Taking advantage of consolidation of technology and preventing sprawl of applications. And then really, the concept of using the practices involved at the IT level for deployment and detection, antivirus, malware to the OT environment. Additional risks identified there were the personnel. We talked about, pandemic and weather, and you don't have access. But another large factor that we're dealing with and we're concerned with is the aging workforce. Right? We have a lot of our workforce now that is very experienced and very capable, but it's coming up on their retirement age. Right, and now, so we're losing people faster than we're getting them. Right, the new generation is not going into water operations management. So that in itself then drives that need for this condensed and consolidated control room. Right, the remote access control capabilities for taking care of our process systems with a lower set of available personnel. Right, the indication there showing you that, again, the application needs to be capable of supporting a view-only type clientele for business needs, and then a persona-based, credential-based access for control, but within the same environment. Again, not trying to manage two systems to do this. So. A second availability issue that we're dealing with now is now that we've enabled the workforce with this mobile environment, now we've untethered them, right? We're allowing them to not be tied to the control room so that they can actually be more operationally efficient and multifunction in their job. So then now that they're not accessible, where we had business needs that would depend on local operations for feeding them data when they needed it, that next step at the enterprise of saying we need to have a self-serve model for data accessibility so that those business needs can be met directly without any intervention or dependence. So again, just pictures there, the concept of my dashboard, that's part of our enterprise portal. That's a persona-based experience. Each person gets to log in and define the way they want to see data and how they want it formatted and how often they can get it. So it's a big part of that self-service model. So a few challenges and the takeaways for that, right? Culture is a huge challenge, right? Culture is change management and the resistance to change, the aversion to change is huge, right? And we have this old guard, new guard, mentality of where we're at and what's acceptable, and so there's adapting and there's adopting. Right, you got to get the old guard to adapt and the new guard to adopt. But the philosophy around your decision and your strategy really needs to be generated towards the workforce of the future. Right, I mean, as we're bringing our systems to the future, we have to have that be the guiding factor. IT/OT convergence is both a challenge and a mitigating factor. Right, it's the challenge is to make it happen. Right, as long as you can bring those groups together. Then together their collaboration is so much better. The tool sets that the IT organization brings to the OT platform for that protective environment is extremely valuable. So a few takeaways. Again, we always talk about air cover, and that's executive leadership. Support and clear messaging, strategy, direction. You got to have that support from the top down to see the value, which we had. Inclusivity. When you're working with these local operations teams and you're bringing change to them, give them a seat at the table. Give them a voice in the operations that you're going through and the changes you're making. As they give feedback, hear that feedback and implement it. That's going to promote ownership. right? They see the feedback, they get their say at the table, and you give it to them, then they're going to take that and become your local champion, right? They're going to be the voice that's going to allow it to spread. And then, small wins. Look for that small problem. Look for a problem that exists and solve it quickly, easily, with your new design, with your new option, so that people can see the effectiveness and the ease and the best practice. So, my little pun there about pandemic and infection, right? I mean, infection and contagion and contagious activity can be good sometimes, right? Once you get somebody to be part of it and they can propagate that through, it's certainly going to help your efforts. So, appreciate the opportunity to share with you. Thank you.